Well, around 8 o'clock last night, I was thinking to myself, cool, Dune's having a, modest little sweep here at the Oscars. It'd be, good timing to, record a video, maybe draw some allegories about, how, the Oscars work and similarities between, what Dune was doing and how Fury Road performed at the Oscars many years ago. Uh, Maybe just kind of just piggyback into just talking about the Dune role playing game a little bit and how, like further thoughts on it after having had it for, half a year or however long it was since I got a hold of a copy of it originally, and all that kind of stuff. But, obviously, elephant in the room, there is a savage attack on stage on Chris Rock by our beloved Will Smith. And of course, everyone wants to have their 2 cents in. I guess, like, ultimately, I find the whole incident sad. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, grew up with both these dudes, being media figures and people to look up to and all that kind of stuff. I will say overall, the greater scheme of things, I'm probably more on Team Chris Rock just in general. He's stayed true to his stand-up comedy roots, and even though he has, been in movies and even made a few movies, he still goes out there and does the circuit. And stand-up comedy is a much more blue-collar kind of entertainment profession than being a Hollywood movie star. Whereas Will Smith, I mean, when was the last time that guy made a family-friendly rap album? The problem with Will Smith, and I think what might ultimately undermine him about this whole situation is as much as everyone is like, says stuff like, oh, he has his reasons, but it's the but in that situation. In the end, all we can really be ultimately judged on as individuals is our actions more so than our words, and our stances on things is what we actually do with ourselves, is how we must be ultimately viewed. This is part of the problem with, like, the internet world of everyone being judged by their words instead of their actions, because no one's able to see your fucking actions on the damn internet. I feel like Will Smith, probably his whole family, should, like, it'd be really good for their mental health if they were just to, like, take a nice long vacation somewhere, maybe rent a nice house in Jamaica or something, get off the grid, get away from Hollywood, try to ground yourself around quote unquote real people, again, not forever, I'm not saying like up and quit like Daniel Day-Lewis or anything like that, just take a little break for a couple of years. Will Smith has been in the limelight since he was a late teenager. And, it's all been coasting basically on the fact that, he was the family-friendly, parents just don't understand rapper, which got him the gig in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and all so on and so forth. The reason why, like, ultimately, just as cultural figures, I still respect Chris Rock to a degree I don't respect Will Smith is, so few of his movies really hold up. I mean, Men in Black isn't really any good anymore. Wild Wild West wasn't even good the first time, let alone now. I don't really feel like Independence Day holds up very well. I, Robot, I Am Legend. He either, like, all he seems to do is, he does dramatic films where he's either angry Will Smith or he's sad Will Smith. And he also makes bad science fiction. In some ways, like, he and Vin Diesel, like, should team up to make science fiction movies, because I feel like those would be a particularly excellent flavor of dumpster fire. But, he's coasting by on goodwill, pun intended, and being, like, framed as, like, this great role model for young kids to, like, follow, and then going up and slapping the hell out of Chris Rock, which, like, I've heard people commenting on, like, oh, I'm impressed with Will Smith's form. I mean, and how Chris Rock was able to take the blow so well. It's like, okay, look, Hollywood people are all trained to fight in a fake fashion where it looks good and looks technically proficient, but it's not actually really connecting. Without even, like, realizing it, they're going to be pulling their punches. And Chris Rock is a bit more street than Will Smith is, I'm going to dare say. So, in the end, like, he kept his cool as good as humanly possible. And really, like, it was foolish. Chris Rock just has to place 2 or 3 phone calls to a couple of his stand-up comedy friends, and then they can make some phone calls to their friends, and before you know it, for the next couple weeks, every stand-up comic in America could just be, like, roasting him and his wife alive on stage every night. I mean, good Lord. It was sad that all this is inspired by, obviously, a really, like, not, it wasn't Chris Rock's finest moment either, just in terms of the joke. Like, really, G.I. Jane. What he should have done is, like reference, like, he, freaking out seeing her in Matrix the Resurrections, like, thinking she's all old and looks bad, and then now seeing her here, in person, like, oh, like, you're all so lovely. He could have, like, made fun of her appearance in a backhanded way where it comes out where it seems like he's complimenting her in person and just focusing on just, like, the lame old person makeup. If like, I don't know, how much he was actually ad-libbing, I think, is questionable. Like, the Oscars are rehearsed ahead of time. They might not have a huge amount of time to go over all their material and such, but I feel deep down in my heart that someone probably greenlights, like, people's bits ahead of time, even if they don't really take enough time to really study or think about the implications. But I have trouble thinking that was just entirely pulled out of Chris Rock's ass, and that he's going to be presenting at the Oscars, and he goes up there without having prepared any material ahead of time and not telling any of the producers what he was planning to say and joke about. So that the camera people know when to switch cameras and follow the timing of stuff, and know where the applause lines are going to be, all that kind of stuff. It was, it's just, it's sad. I would imagine that, like, Will Smith was probably really tuned up. I mean, like, there's been already, like, the kind of public marital problems that have already kind of been an issue with him. This is just going to further already has further elevated. There's all sorts of people who hadn't heard that are now hearing about all that shit. So in terms of Barbra Streisand effect, I don't think this is, like, going to work out in his favor. Like I said, it undermines that wholesome family friendly role model shtick that he's built himself around. Truth be told, he's really not all that good of an actor. Ironically, Chris Rock is a better actor than Will Smith, I would say. Will Smith is good at crying. He can make himself cry. And, but, like, he's always still kind of Will Smith, even when he's in his serious roles. And so I kind of feel he's always kind of been given a pass because he's got a little bit of that Keanu Reeves thing going on where he's just a really nice, likable person, and so you want to see him succeed. It makes you feel good to see him do well, kind of a thing, because he deserves it because he's doing things the right way, kind of a motif. And this sweeps the legs out from underneath it. But I don't know. Yeah, like, Chris Rock could easily get revenge without having to, like, go to the LAPD and press charges or anything. It's such a delicate situation politically, also, because of various factors. In many ways, I do feel like it's a breath of fresh air. It's something that people can all talk about and actually could get a certain degree of agreement on across party lines, because there's no political angle to this. There's no racial angle to this. There's a few people really trying to stretch to make this about sexism or make this about ableism, but like, that's not, like, most people aren't picking up on those kinds of things. It's not about Ukraine. It's not about Corona Light beer or any of that kind of stuff. It's not about getting your vaccination card. None of that. It's just two dudes having a spat on stage. It's refreshing. It's refreshing. There's, like, none of these overheated angles around it. It's such a nice, clear-cut thing to talk about. And so, yeah, I just spent 10 minutes talking about it at the beginning of a Dune video. So yeah, Dune won a bunch of technical categories, but then didn't get Best Director or Best Picture or anything like that. And I don't believe it got any acting nods at all. At least not that I recall hearing. I mean, like it's the Oscars, and I'm not paying that much attention to them anymore. When it comes right down to it, this year's Oscars, like looking at all the movies that are being nominated for various things, the only one of them that I had even seen was Dune. So, like by default, I'm just gonna like feel like that was the one that should have won all the categories because it is the only one I experienced. Well, with one exception, I will actually say that Shang-Chi should have won Best Special Effects because I do think that Shang-Chi had better special effects than Dune. But anyway, just going on the fact that it won Best Sound and Best Cinematography. It's like, okay, so it's the best looking and best sounding movie, but like it's not the best movie, and the guy who directed all this and put it together is not the best director. Uh, the more extreme example was when Fury Road like swept so many different categories, including getting best director. Like Dune, only like got what, like 5 or 6 by the time it was all said and done. So it wasn't quite as bad of a thing with Dune, but when Fury Road was, got all of its nominations, it got, won all the technical categories, got a best director, but no best picture. Like, okay, so how is it that the movie that looks the best, sounds the best, has the best action, the best special effects, the best editing, and the best directing, how is that not also the best movie? Like, that you see things like that, and that seems to like jarringly. I mean, this is supposed to be a bunch of different independent people all voting to determine like who wins what categories, and so like just looking down at the individual people voting, the way it seems to stand out weird that you would check that many boxes that this is the best, this is the best, this is the best, and then you need to get to the last one and you instead vote for the most obscure thing on there and not the one that you had voted as best for all the other shit that normally, when you add all these things together, it's got the best directing, and it's got the best sound, quality, best score, and music, and just the ambient noise, and the crunch of the gravel under the tires, and the whisper of the wind, and the sand and the breeze. You can hear, you can hear Charlize Theron sweat in that movie, yeah. It looks great. It's wonderful. And yet somehow that doesn't add up to best movie. Dune is not quite as extreme because it didn't win quite as many things. But I feel that does kind of speak to a similar trend, though, because, like, it should have won more things, I feel. But, we got to pat Kenneth Branagh on the back for, like bringing up old Irish shit. Something. Whatever. I mean, the highlight of the night was like, Will Smith versus Chris Rock. So we'll just see how this evolves. Perhaps if they can bring back MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch and work that in as like an ongoing new theme. Instead of having hosts who just present the awards, they'll have hosts that fight it out to get to see who presents the awards or something like that. I'm sorry, that's not the most original joke in the world, probably. Just like Chris Rock's joke, not the most original in the world. So sad. So anyway, I guess to trying to somehow keep this on the subject of Dune. As a role-playing game, the book is missing things. It's missing a lot of things. It's not even just that, the house rules aren't really completely fleshed out, which is a problem considering that you're supposed to make your players' characters group, you're supposed to make the house that they all work for before they even make their fucking characters. And so, and since they had complete house rule creations in the Star Trek Klingon book, I don't really see why they couldn't have managed to pull that off. There's a few things, like, 'cause I've got a good chunk of of Modifius's Star Trek role-playing game library, and there's a lot of care put into that. It's got some typo issues here and there, and I know some people don't necessarily like the LCARS style paper, in the rule books and all that. But like it does a better job than a lot of things lately at actually capturing the real spirit of classic Star Trek, more so than any of the shows they've been making in the last decade. So I know Modiphius is capable of producing a well researched, loving thing. And Dune, it seems like it is another example of that at first, but I feel like it's somewhat damaged by the terms of its licensing. Obviously, when they got the license to do a Dune movie, it came along also with all the Brian Herbert stuff. And to me, like right off the bat, that to me starts to derail it because a lot of the Brian Herbert additions in the timeline, like kind of screw up the whole thing, especially since they wrote out the Butlerian Jihad the way they did, and that's kind of the root of where the whole greater arc of history that is to be seen in the Dune saga, where it all stems from. It has like a chain effect on everything later, especially if this game is going to be like the introduction for a whole new generation of kids to Dune, who might be into the movie because they all want to be, their own little version of Timothy Chalamet, and they want to get into playing the game. And this is how this is easier than reading these thick ass stale novels and yada yada yada. But it's gonna give them this like dorkier, cheesier, gimmickier kind of idea of what the thing is. And the book isn't, as much as it says that you can play in any timeline in the Doom universe or the Dune universe. It's like, sure, technically, but like all the templates and archetypes and stuff that are then presented in the book for character creation, down to even just having the great houses as a feature, like that doesn't translate to every last time part of the timeline. It kind of forces you to like either have to just sit and wait for them to put out an official rule book for one of these eras, or you're gonna just have to come up with your own thing for what is a fish speaker archetype or what is an honored mater archetype. And it seems too much just kind of like, I don't know, like the more I analyze it, the more kind of slightly half-assed it kind of seems just in terms of the concept. Is everyone playing for the same noble house really the optimal approach to Dune? It is an approach. It's a little reminiscent of trying to have everyone be on the same starship in Star Trek. But, I don't know, like the houses are, like it de-emphasizes the nature of the factions in a way. Like it makes the Bene Gesserit and the Bene Tleilax and the Guild like too subservient to the houses, when really they're kind of like separate but equal institutions in their own right. And should be factions in and of themselves. Like all the characters could be working for the Bene Gesserit and not and not a specific household. And they could all be agents of the Spacing Guild and not a specific household. And I feel like the setup kind of like herds people into just playing it one specific way, as opposed to like really opening up the setting to like its full potential. And all that kind of stuff. Plus, also, because of the fact that it's named Dune, it's always going to be a bit too focused on Arrakis. And, I mean, like, it is the centerpiece of the setting, but, the role-playing game should allow you to explore the rest of the universe and expand upon it. There's something that the old West End Star Wars game was really good at, was, like, really kind of help make you feel like you're playing in this larger galaxy, without being too attached to having to have all your adventures take place on Coruscant and that kind of stuff. Or I guess maybe Tatooine would be the better analogy in this one. I don't know. I've still yet to actually try running it in any capacity. I mean, like the basic framework of a Modiphius's rules seems all right. I like that they just go ahead and take the die 6 and just only rely on the D20. It seems a bit more streamlined than some of their previous games. Turning, instead of having attributes, having your character's drives be defined is kind of interesting, to say the least. I feel that in some ways it helps kind of like justify characters' actions within a narrative framework, kind of, maybe, potentially. I don't know. Having not actually play tested it in any fashion myself, it's hard to say, but... Like, in terms of the functionality, it's as functional or dysfunctional as any other Modiphius game. So, whether or not you'd like it, kind of judge through that framework. If you've never played Modifius before, I don't know if this would be the place to start. Their Fallout game or their Star Trek game might be better. I have at least run their Star Trek game a little bit, so I can at least speak to that one as being functional if you ignore some of the more advanced rules. Like some of the rules just kind of clutter up play and slow things down. But if you stick to just the more basic core rule dynamics, it chugs along all right. And there's ways you can kind of twist and play with it. There's videos I've done on the subject in the past. Just I don't know. Like I felt more impressed with it at first than I feel about it after a healthy reread. And like I said, like it needs more faction. Like you should have the Sardaukar and the Fremen both be available, but they only give you the Fremen, and there's and stuff like that. I don't know. It's close to being good. It's really close, and it's not there, and it's taking them too long to get some actual honest source books. I mean, a GM screen. Who cares? Like chunks of this setting are missing, and so you're just forcing your game masters who try to run this early on to have to fill in the blanks, and then as new source materials do come out, that's just going to end up conflicting with the things that they've had to establish in their games. So yeah, stay waspinated.